The old 750 down there, we had the horsepower to do it.
Oh!
There's
That is a pen.
You sure you can lift that, old man?
Parker Schnable lost his best gold machine and still found over $2 million in the frozen dirt. Season 15 was cold, hard, and full of broken parts and frozen mud. While others quit, Parker kept going, digging deep and working fast each day. He spent a huge amount of money on land that nearly ruined him and his team. Tune in, because right when he thought he was safe, the ground started fighting back with full force. Bob replaces Big Red. Gold Rush Season 15 was a mess worth rewinding for. With gold prices shooting up like soda from a shaken can, it was a no-excuses, all-in kind of game. Dominion Creek turned into a war zone of cold noise, mud, and big dreams. Parker made that land his battleground, a frozen sandbox where dirt wasn't guaranteed and every rock could either be a jackpot or a complete waste of diesel. But just when Parker thought he had the upper hand, one call changed everything. It started with trouble, the kind of trouble that makes even the tough ones lose sleep. Machines fell apart. Big Red, that old faithful wash plant that had brought in more gold than some small countries produce in a year, hit the wall. It had been huffing along season after season, and this year it finally tapped out. The bars snapped, the screens gave up, and just like that, he had to call time on a legend. But he didn't sit around whining about it. He had another plan. Tucked away at Sulphur Creek sat Bob, a big, bold beast of a wash plant that hadn't seen action in weeks. He looked at it, and you could tell he was already running the numbers in his head. It wasn't a question of whether Bob could do it. It was about getting Bob there and getting it running before the ground froze over again. Lee, one of his most trusted crew members, took the lead. The move was risky. The roads were rough, the haul was long, and time wasn't on their side. But this wasn't a team that buckled under pressure. With haulers rolling, cables tightening, and every hand on deck, Bob got dragged out of his nap and into the spotlight. Bridge cut was a mess to handle, though. The ground was uneven, half frozen, with deep pockets that liked to eat tires and stall loaders. Crews had to dig smart and fast. No one was strolling around with a coffee cup and a checklist. These folks were busting knuckles, fighting off cold burns, and making gear work longer than it wanted to. While he was doing that, Rick Ness was living through his own storm. He'd thrown more than $1 million into a new claim, hoping for fireworks. His team did strike gold, about $670,000 worth in 1 week. Not bad, but it came with baggage. Duncan Creek had a water rights issue hanging over it like a dark cloud. Rick made the call to leave the site and handle it in Vancouver. The timing couldn't have been worse. Right after he left, the site started drowning in rising groundwater. Buzz Lago and Brian Zaremba tried to fix it, but the damage was quick. They hit the water table. The wash plant had to shut down, dirt got wet, hope got soggy, and everyone stood there watching gold slip into a puddle. Meanwhile, he wasn't exactly sipping cocoa either. Bob worked like a champ, but even that beast had limits. Conveyor belts jammed, screens cracked, but he kept it going. Fix it, reroute it, push it. That was the only mindset. They milked every last bit of thawed dirt, every shovelful of ground that didn't fight back too hard. As the season raced to its end, things got tighter. Nights were long, darker, colder. Machines started refusing to start in the morning. Oil turned into sludge, fuel lines froze. People started snapping at each other, but he didn't entertain drama. He moved crew members like chess pieces, assigning tasks like a general on a warpath. Then came the final haul. Big Red was history. Bob was scared but standing. He rolled into the last days with the crew nearly running on fumes. But they ran anyway, because that's what he did. He led from the front, hard hat on, boots muddy, hands dirty. At the weigh-in, the silence was thick. Then the scale spoke. More than $2 million in gold, a pile that looked like it had been pulled out of a pirate story. That moment wasn't flashy. No jumping around, just tired grins, quiet nods, and a heavy breath of relief. And then it was time to shut it down, pack up the hoses, wrap the gear. Let the machine sleep. The Yukon would freeze over again and he would plan the next round. Because this isn't just a job. It's a hunt, a grind, a war against time, ice, and every challenge nature can throw. Gold counted, gear packed. Now the machines take the spotlight. The machines behind Parker's fortune. Season 15 didn't hand him anything. He wrestled it all out of the dirt. From losing Big Red to dragging Bob back to life, from patching pipes in the dark to steering trucks through blizzards, it was all a fight. And the payout wasn't just cash. It was proof that grit still matters. Moving a massive wash plant to Dominion Creek in just 8 hours? That's not just fast. It's freakishly fast. In mining talk, that's like teleporting. And his crew wasn't just doing this for fun, they were chasing that shiny, heavy payoff. When the gold trays got dumped, Big Red, the beast of a wash plant, coughed up close to 100 ounces. That's about $250,000 in raw sparkle. But Bob, the new hotshot on the block, decided he wasn't going to be outdone. His first run gave him nearly 300 ounces. That's $750,000 just like that. Why? Because they hit the juicy white channel and pay dirt. Think of it like a gold-rich birthday cake buried under a whole lot of mud. And then Roxanne, working her elbow cut like she meant it, tossed another 276 ounces into the pot. Altogether, his boys had raked in over 6,000 ounces. That's more than $16 million in gold, and they weren't even done yet. But don't go thinking it's all high fives and champagne. Dominion Creek was still crawling, and the season was about to close shop. Time was not their friend. He didn't have the luxury of second chances. The sun was dipping lower, temperatures were turning mean, and one wrong move could wipe out a whole week's worth of digging. Machines were breaking down like they were in on some cruel joke, and fuel wasn't exactly cheap out there. But when you're running a crew and your name is stamped on every win and every loss, you either keep pushing or get buried. He knew that Dominion was a gamble. It looked promising on paper, but real life doesn't care about paper. Real life brings boulders where there should be gravel, floods your cut just when you get to the good stuff, and throws in mechanical failure at just the worst possible moment. He had to keep morale up while also doubling production, stretching his team thin and hoping that Bob, his shiny new wash plant, didn't choke in the middle of all that pressure. And yet there were glimmers of gold, literally and figuratively. Every tray that shimmered with yellow flakes meant they weren't just playing in the mud, they were pulling treasure from the belly of the earth. He didn't crack jokes. He didn't pat himself on the back. He just stared at the gold like a man possessed, calculating every move, every bucket, every shift left in the season. Dominion wasn't cooperating. The ground was patchy. Some cuts had decent pay, others were duds. He had to think like a chess master and gamble like a poker player. Rerouting trucks, running shifts through the night, tweaking angles on the sluice box, all of it while managing the kind of exhaustion that makes your bones feel heavy. Still, no one else was going to carry him to that final goal. Big Red was already tired. The old, faithful machine had done more than its share over the seasons, but it was clearly past its prime. Bob was the future, and Bob had to prove himself fast. The team rotated between babysitting Bob's performance and fixing breakdowns that kept trying to derail them. Hoses burst, pumps stalled, belts slipped. But if it was fixable, they fixed it. He wasn't chasing perfection. He was chasing enough, just enough to finish strong, just enough to stay on top. And it wasn't just about gold anymore. It was about reputation, about showing the world that even after all these years, all those piles of dirt and busted knuckles, he was still the one to beat. Newcomers tried to make noise. Old dogs tried to hold their ground. But when the real numbers dropped, nobody touched his haul. Rain hammered the site during one of the crucial runs. Trucks got stuck, mud turned into soup. And yet the crew kept moving. He shouted less and listened more, but his presence was like an electric wire, always buzzing. Everyone felt it. No one wanted to be the one to slow him down. They respected the hustle, even when it burned. One of the final weigh-ins showed a surprise spike. The elbow cut, which had been giving trouble earlier, decided to reward their patience. Gold poured in, flake after flake, chunk after chunk. It wasn't a jackpot, but it was close. Enough to breathe. Enough to taste the finish line. He didn't throw a party. He didn't hug the crew or pop bottles. He just stood there looking at the tray with that half grin that says, "Told you it would work." Not out loud, just in his eyes. With the season finale crawling into view, Parker pushed one last time. Dominion's deep end still held some promise, but they had to clear it fast. That meant night shifts, double loads, no room for screw-ups. The days blurred. Sunrise, diesel, gravel, exhaustion, over and over. The final week was pure chaos. The weather went sour. The machines threw tantrums. But the gold kept coming. Bob hummed like a beast in its groove. The team, worn out and filthy, kept their heads down and hands moving. When the final cleanup happened, there were no speeches, just heavy breathing, calloused hands, and quiet pride. The scale didn't lie. His gamble had worked. He didn't just reach the goal. He bulldozed right past it. While others were guessing, he was grinding. He didn't care about what other crews were up to. Let them talk. Let them rest. He'd rather double the shifts, skip the sleep, and chase one more bucket. Every time a pan glittered, every time a tray held more than expected, it was like a shot of adrenaline straight to the soul. Let them call it a comeback. Let them call it a lucky season. He doesn't need the words. The gold speaks for itself. And it says, I was here. It was tough. It was worth it. Gold was found, but the Yukon still had more to throw at them. Gold in Yukon hell. Imagine being stuck in the freezing wilds of the Yukon, digging up dirt for a glimmer of gold. That's the mess a certain miner threw himself into in Season 15 of Gold Rush. But this wasn't just another round of cold mornings and busted machines. This season, he was on fire. Not literally, but close. He walked out of that chaos with more than $2 million in gold. The ground may have been frozen, but the money was definitely hot. This win didn't come easy. From day one, he was gambling big. He threw down a jaw-dropping $15 million on the Dominion Creek claim. That's not pocket change. That's the kind of money you spend when you're either a genius or absolutely out of your mind. At first, it looked like the gamble might flop. Machines broke down like they were made of paper. The weather had a full-on tantrum of ice, mud, and wind that could peel skin. Still, he kept the circus moving, tightening bolts, shouting orders, and refusing to blink. While the weather was trying to crush everyone's spirit and the machines were doing their best impression of dying dinosaurs, he stayed locked in. He wasn't hiding out in a heated trailer. He was on the ground, in the sludge, doing the dirty work. That's rare. Most folks with millions on the line don't like to get their boots dirty. But this guy, he was covered in grease and mud like a soldier in the trenches. That kind of hands-on hustle rubs off on people. His crew didn't just work hard because they had to, they worked hard because he did. Every greasy fix, every freezing sunrise, every stuck track was tackled as a team. The vibe wasn't some happy camp nonsense. It was grit, sweat, and a sort of unsaid respect that made people stick around even when things got brutal. And brutal they did. Dominion Creek wasn't some laid-back playground. It was a beast. The permafrost didn't just slow things down, it wrecked gear. Pumps froze, belts snapped. There were days the mud swallowed tires whole. You could see the stress stretch across everyone's faces. But quitting wasn't on the table. He made sure of that. He didn't shout to motivate me. He worked. That was his move. Hustle harder than the next guy, and maybe, just maybe, you'll dig your way out of the mess. He also knew that tired people break down faster than busted hoses. So he paid up. Details on wages? Locked up. But whispers said they were stacked. Crew members weren't scraping by on peanuts, and they weren't just tossing and turning in a freezing shack either. He made sure there was hot food and a real bed waiting at the end of each exhausting day. That kind of care goes a long way when you're thousands of miles from comfort. Still, it wasn't just about the money. Something deeper held this crew together. He didn't treat his workers like tools. He saw them. A job well done got attention. A team win was celebrated. Even when things got messy, he looked for ways to keep morale alive. A campfire night, a shared laugh over a ruined dig. Little moments where people remembered they weren't machines, they were people. And speaking of machines, he didn't cheap out. He brought in serious hardware, massive dozers, heavy-duty wash plants, enough iron to build a city, but even with all that gear, things constantly broke. That's mining. Every day it was a race to keep things running just long enough to scrape a little more gold from the muck. And when it broke, no panic. They swarmed the problem, fixed it fast, and got back to digging. There were other claims nearby, sure, other crews chasing shiny dreams, but something about his operation just hit something different. It was tight. It was focused. It wasn't about flashy drama or big speeches. It was about movement. Keep the machines rolling, keep the crew going. One more bucket, one more ounce, one more shot at a win. By mid-season, things were on edge. The target was massive, 6,000 ounces. That number loomed like a shadow. Every mistake felt bigger. Every hour lost felt like a disaster. But that pressure? It didn't crush them, it sharpened them. They hustled harder. They got smarter. They found ways to stay in the game while others burned out. Back at camp, he kept morale high. Not with corporate nonsense or forced pep talks, but with real leadership. He showed up early, stayed late, took the same hits as everyone else. People noticed, and that kind of behavior builds loyalty. You want your boss to have your back? Start by seeing him in the dirt with you. And Dominion Creek started to pay off. The gold count ticked up, slowly at first, then faster. The numbers climbed and so did the mood. The crew was still tired, but now they were tired with purpose. Each clean-out sparkled just a little brighter. Each haul felt earned. The grind turned into results. They crossed the halfway mark and didn't slow down. Momentum kicked in. The machines run smoother. The crew moved faster. The weather even backed off just a little. It wasn't easy, but for the first time it felt possible. That's what kept them going. Not just the gold, but the win. By season's end, they hit the target and blew past it. Over 6,000 ounces. That's more than $2 million, but more than that, it was proof. Proof that hard work, smart planning, and real leadership could still win in a place that chews people up and spits them out. Season 15 wasn't just another mining show. It was a masterclass in grit. Parker Schnable didn't just dig gold. He dug deep into what it takes to lead when everything around you is falling apart. And that's worth more than anything you'll pull out of the dirt. The Yukon doesn't care about your plans. It doesn't care how much you spent. It's going to throw everything it has at you. Cold, mud, failure. Most folks pack up. He doubled down. When things got bad, he got better. When others froze up, he adapted. That's the difference between a good season and a gold-stuffed win. And the crew? They weren't just part of the machine, they were the machine. Every wrench turned, every bucket hauled, every night shift pushed them closer. Not because they were forced to, but because they believed in the mission. He made sure they saw the big picture. Some nights, the Yukon turned mean. Winds howled like banshees. Equipment locked up in sheets of ice. But even then, someone was out there checking belts, fixing leaks, dragging hoses through the snow. That wasn't luck. That was loyalty. That was grit. And when the final gold count came in, there wasn't some over-the-top celebration. No fireworks, no champagne showers, just quiet nods, tired smiles, and the feeling that they'd done something real, something hard, something few others could. Was it really worth risking everything for a bit of gold? Drop your thoughts in the comments, like and subscribe for more.